You're listening to the Quint's podcast.
Why has the construction work for the controversial Central Vista Re-development project been going on in Delhi through the thick of the pandemic? This 2.8 billion rupee worth project, which has been touted by critics as the Modi government's vanity project, has been going on under what the government defines as quote-unquote essential services. This project involves construction of a new parliament and revamping the north and south blocks of Lutyens Delhi, which requires tearing down some iconic government buildings that form a part of Delhi's historical narrative. While initial legal battles to stop this project was unsuccessful as the Supreme Court gave its green signal, now there is another petition that is being heard at the Delhi High Court that seeks to temporarily halt the construction activities owing to the pandemic. The centre, it seems, had been continuing the construction work through Delhi's lockdown period on the condition that all labourers are staying on site. However, a ground report by the Quint that was brought on record at the High Court as well has found out that there are several construction workers, in fact, who stay off-site and travel to and fro to work every day. Although the petitioners have raised concerns over the impact of this move on the health of the construction workers and also Delhi's COVID situation generally, the centre has called the PIL a facade and an attempt to stall the project. But even as the Delhi High Court order on the matter is pending, let's deep dive into what makes the government's ambitious project a contentious one and what concerns and objections do historians and conservationists have around this project. In this podcast, we'll hear from architect, urban planner and conservation consultant A.J.K. Menon and the Quint special correspondent Asmita Nandi, who brought the truth of the construction workers not living on site to light. You're tuned in to The Big Story, the podcast where we dissect the headline-making news for you. And I'm your host, Shorbury. Recent photographs of the Rajpath have given us a glimpse into the kind of changes that are coming up through the Central Vista project. The public areas around the India Gate located in the heart of Delhi, which undoubtedly is one of those spaces that most people associate the capital of India with, is looking completely different now. For those who haven't seen the photograph, there are trenches dug on the sides of the road that prior to March 2020 would always be full of people. The lampposts on either side of the road facing the India Gate are also gone. And what stands now around that stretch are yellow enclosures that have been set up by the CPWD that indicate that this area is going under reconstruction work. But after this photograph gave a fresh impetus to criticisms around the Central Vista plan on social media platforms, signs have now been put up prohibiting photography or videography of the area. But just to elaborate a little more on what exactly the plan involves, it is looking at revamping large chunks of what is known as Lutyens Delhi, the area running from the Rashtrapati Bhavan to the Princess Park near the India Gate that is peppered with some really iconic buildings such as the National Museum, the National Archives, the Indira Gandhi National Centre for Arts, all of which hold some incredible heritage objects. That patch is essentially what is going to be the Central Vista. And the plan envisions a new parliament building as well, triangular in shape, to come up here with a space for 900 MPs and enough space for a joint parliament session of 1,350 MPs. The plan also involves a new secretariat, a new PM's residence and office, and a new house for the vice president. While there's no denying that government spaces do need to be expanded over time, anticipating an increase in MPs in both houses after future delimitation exercises are conducted, this project has consistently found itself in the center of controversies and petitions over a lot of factors. A primary concern has been that this plan comes at a cost of losing Delhi's heritage, losing history, losing public spaces, and also causing environmental damage. But right from the very beginning, when the proposal was launched in 2019, experts have accused the government of functioning in an opaque manner, rushing through approvals and paying absolutely no heed to what experts have to say on this. And A.J.K. Menon explains on how the government went ahead with this decision without consulting the public and with a complete disregard to rules.
You see, since the project was announced in November 2019, as a complete surprise, because such opacity has not been known in Indian development at all. Public development is, in the public domain. But suddenly, November 2019, we realized this iconic space was going to be remodeled.
Right.
Now, naturally, that generated a lot of concern. As facts emerged, that concern turned to dismay and complete, anguish that such a thing was being done on an iconic historic space without any consultation of the public or due process. One example I can give you, due process, is suddenly you get to hear that land use has to be changed to implement the project. Now, these are things that in a normal public project is known well in advance that they propose to do it and all that, and after that is done, the project is mooted. But the project has been mooted, has been, adopted by the government, and now they're going to change the land use. So basically, they're presenting the public with a fait accompli. So, but they had to have the fig leaf of due process, so they invite objections. Hundreds of objections come, which they dutifully listen with their ears closed, because within next day they say, yes, we've heard the objection and we agree to the changes. So such travesty and many others, catalyze the only option that had available to the public, which was go to court.
And that's exactly how a batch of petitions against this project came up in the Supreme Court earlier in 2020. But as I already mentioned, in a 2-1 verdict, the Supreme Court gave its approval to the Central Vista project on 5th January 2021, calling it, quote-unquote, just and valid. But even so, as the country's economy and health infrastructure continue to be affected in the raging pandemic, there have been a lot of questions about whether it is right for the government to carry on with this pet project as the country suffers a deadly crisis. And that's how two petitioners, Anya Malhotra, a well-known translator and interpreter, and Sohail Hashmi, a noted historian, came to file a petition in the Delhi High Court seeking a temporary halt in the construction work. Owing to legal concerns, Mr. Hashmi couldn't be contacted for this podcast, but Mr. Menon explains what the petitioner's concern is with the construction work. Mr. Menon also asks, who is this quote-unquote essential service meant for?
So there were a whole clutch of earlier cases which looked at various aspects of this process and the project and the process it was following. The short-circuiting of due process, the complete shamaholic of the democratic processes generated these cases. So the first lot, there were so many, the Supreme Court finally said, we'll put it all under our, in our court and we'll examine it, which they examined it. In January this year, 2021, they issued their instructions, which was, yes, the project is okay. Again, what you do is the Supreme Court saying the project is okay, now you've got no other avenue. And they go ahead, environmental clearance is given, all kinds of things are done. Again, completely, making a mockery of this process of environment clearance. Environment clearance required a clearance for the entire project. You got to see the impact of the project on the environment. The government, however, very cleverly gives small projects after small projects after small projects, claiming that there's no impact. And the project started proceeding full steam ahead. By then, the second wave of coronavirus had taken hold, and the country and the city was in dire conditions, lockdowns and all that. Then the government had the temerity to say that this project will continue because it is an essential service. Now, amazing, health is not an essential service, the well-being of the society is not an essential service, economy is not an essential service, but this project is an essential service. Raising two questions, what is essential and and the service for whom? Saying that, look, we are not disputing the Supreme Court's decision because, you're not allowed to. But we are saying that there's health and safety involved, and this under these circumstances, the project should be delayed. So that is the case that Sohail Hashmi and his co-petitioners are filing in the Supreme Court right now. So that's where they say the judgment is reserved. They'll give the judgment. All they're saying is that, look, there are serious questions, of course, but it narrows down to the fact that, under these circumstances of, COVID pandemic, the project should not proceed.
The petitioners have clarified that they do not seek to override the Supreme Court's judgment, but are only asking for the construction work to stop temporarily over safety concerns. And to that effect, the Quint's ground report have also been presented to the court in a bid to validate the concerns. And speaking of the ground report, when the Quint's correspondent Asmita Nandi went to report on the construction work, she found out that boards had been put up prohibiting photography and videography of the construction site, as we've said. But after talking to construction workers, she also found out that some workers were traveling to the construction work even though it is against the lockdown norms. And in situ workers in the condition of anonymity said that they were being put up in cramped up spaces where they couldn't maintain social distancing. And the workers seem to be caught in a fix as they can't refuse to work under these conditions either, owing to financial strains. Listen to a snippet from the ground report.
3 weeks into Delhi's lockdown, and the construction at Central Vista project has not been stopped. We are standing. कौन मना कर रहा है?
There are security barriers on the gate.
Yeah, of course. I mean the security barriers. I am standing on the road right now, and I don't think anybody can stop me from recording or reporting anything on the road.
No, it is not the point of stopping, please.
After facing heavy criticism for continuing the construction of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's pet project, the Central Vista, the beautification of the Central Vista project, amid the ongoing pandemic and the lockdown, the security on the site has been heavily beefed up. Even as a journalist, I was stopped from shooting and taking pictures or talking to the construction workers. This I got to know once I entered the labor camp, where some of the construction workers have been given a space by the government to live. But there are a couple of construction workers that the Quint spoke to who say that they stay separately because they do not want to live in a cramped up space, because there are 7 to 8 construction workers who are living in one tent. गवर्नमेंट ने कहा है कि यहाँ पे लोग जो काम कर रहे हैं उनको यहीं पे रहने का जगह दिया है, तो आप भी यहीं पे रहते हैं?
हम नहीं रह पा रहे हैं, रह रहे हैं, बहुत सारे लोग रह रहे हैं यहाँ पे।
मतलब क्यों नहीं रहते यहाँ पे?
हम लोग में बगल में रूम है, इसलिए हम लोग नज़दीक में हैं कि जो दूर का है, जो उसका रहने की व्यवस्था नहीं है, पैसा नहीं, वो लोग रह रहे हैं यहाँ पे। फिलहाल हम लोग नहीं रह पा रहे हैं, ये एक रूम में 6 से 7 बंदे रह रहे हैं, तो हम लोग नहीं हो पा रहा है।
तो बाकी जहाँ पे आप रह रहे हैं कि वो भी गवर्नमेंट ने दिया है कि अपने आप?
हम लोग अपने
कुछ लोगों का कहना है कि यहाँ जो कंस्ट्रक्शन चल रहा है वो बंद कर देना चाहिए फिलहाल के लिए, कुछ दिनों के लिए। आपका क्या मानना है?
वो बंद हो जाएगा, फिर हम गरीब लोग फिर ठंडा पानी जो भी चल रहा है जीवन, वो भी परेशानी में आ जाएगा। ऐसी परेशानी पूरे देश है ही, और परेशानी में आ जाएंगे।
दिल्ली में जो लॉकडाउन हो गया है 3 हफ्तों से, तो आप घर जाने की नहीं सोचे?
सोच रहे हैं, मैंने फिर तो घर पे वही हाल है, यहाँ पे भी वही हाल, तो जाएं कहाँ?
पिछले साल गए थे घर?
पिछले साल घर गांव में ही था।
गांव में ही थे, तो उसके बाद यहीं पे आ गए।
हाँ,
वापस जाने की नहीं सोची?
Please watch the full video on the ground report on the Quint website. You can also find the link to it on the episode show notes. But now, even though the Solicitor General Tushar Mehta, who's representing the centre, is alleging that the petitioners come with the intention to make yet another attempt to stall the project, the petitioners aren't exactly alone in asking for the project to be stopped looking at the pandemic. 76 Indian and international intellectuals and scholars, including noted historian Romila Thapar, academician Gayatri Spivak, Anish Kapoor, who's a well-known artist, and Nobel winner Orhan Pamuk, have also written an open letter to PM Modi criticizing this quote-unquote extravagant project. They wrote, and I'm reading one line from the letter, quote, "It is especially troubling that this extravagant project is moving ahead in the midst of a devastating pandemic, endangering workers and squandering scarce resources that could be used to save lives." End quote. They also lamented about the impending demolition of the National Museum, the Indira Gandhi National Centre for the Arts, and the National Archives Annex building, and how the demolition will cause, quote, "irreparable harm to world-renowned institutions that have been painstakingly built up over decades," end quote. As you know, these buildings have been holding thousands of historical maps, manuscripts, archival documents, sculptures, coins, and paintings dating as far back as the Harappan Valley civilization that are not only integral to Delhi's history but also India's history as a whole. And although there are plans to shift manuscripts and artifacts to either the north or south blocks before the demolition takes place, there's still a lot of worry about how these fragile objects will be transferred and whether they'll be able to withstand it. Mr. Menon also talks about why these structures shouldn't be demolished in the first place.
Now let's look at the design itself. Right from the beginning, we in our petitions, and we have said this project is not necessary. It is completely a waste. It's a vanity project. You don't demolish. For example, the National Museum, which is a cultural center, and shift it somewhere else. You don't destroy the Ministry of External Affairs, which is just 10 years old, custom made for the Ministry of External Affairs, and you demolish it. These are all IGNCA, which is about 20 years old, but new buildings, demolish it. So then the historians and the people sort of said that, look, there's something terrible here. You are destroying three iconic spaces, buildings or spaces, because the National Museum, you may not consider it Taj Mahal, but in the memory of the people, in its significance, it contains civilizational artifacts that are in fact priceless. So it is, the National Museum is an iconic building. Generations have grown up saying that, well, this is where our civilization is housed, and now you're going to remove it. Now, heritage is not just a building. Heritage is more than a building. It is the meaning and its significance. Right. So they're completely disregarding it. Or look at IGNCA. Now, if you look at the original plan of Lutyens, he had made the crossing of Janpath and Rajpath as what he called the cultural hub. The idea was that even they realized that this is an imperial city and we must give something to the people. After all, we are in India. So while they built this imperial capital, the hub, the Rajpath Janpath crossing, they converted into a cultural hub, the culture of the people of India, where they located the museum, the National Theatre, the archives, and the library. Now, over the course of time, the library remained in Calcutta. It never got built in Delhi, but the Ministry of External Affairs came in that plot. National Museum was built, and the National Theatre was built as IGNCA. And the archives building was built, and when you say that the iconic building will be demolished, the third iconic building, archives, is not being demolished, only the annexes will be demolished, the new annex. But again, that raises huge problems. They've got delicate artifacts. Archives.
Where we spoke to
and one is normally concerned with bureaucracy. How will they handle all this valuable resource?
Has he gotten in touch with the concerns and all the questions around this project?
How to handle these delicate manuscripts?
You see, it is so opaque. One can't say yes, one can't say no. If you say yes, they're saying. If you say no, they are not consulting. They say we are consulting.
I see.
You see, it's such an opaque situation. They've got an answer for everything.
There are, of course, countless other problems in how the government has gone about the project, such as evading a heritage audit, evading environmental assessments, and evading public debates that is mandated by the Delhi Master Plan of 2021 before redeveloping Grade 1 heritage structures. But before I wrap up this episode, if you're looking for a further breakdown on all the criticisms that the Central Vista Re-development project has elicited from all corners, please do check out our earlier episode of The Big Story on the Central Vista project on our show notes, where we spoke to Sohail Hashmi, who talks about all the concerns and all the questions around this project. If you like listening to this episode, please subscribe to the Big Story playlist for episodic updates. We're live on Apple, Google Podcast, Spotify, JioSaavn, and most of the other popular podcast streaming platforms. For other podcasts, please log on to the Quint website and check out the podcast section. For any feedback, shoot an email to podcasts@thequint.com.
Thanks for listening. Log on to the Quint's website and check out our other podcasts.